Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Life and Times. William Shakespeare, the playwright. There exists a curious paradox when it comes to the life of William Shakespeare. He easily has more words written about him than any other famous English writer. Yet we know the least about him. This inevitability means that most of what is written about him is either fabrication or speculation. The reason why so little is known about Shakespeare is that he wasn't a novelist or a historian or a man of letters. He was a playwright. The playwrights were considered fairly low on the social pecking order in Elizabethan society. Writing plays was about providing entertainment for the masses, the great unwashed. It was the equivalent to being a journalist for a tabloid newspaper. In fact, we only know of Shakespeare's work because two of his friends had the foresight to collect his plays together following his death and have them printed. The only reason they did so was apparently because they rated his talent and thought it would be a shame if his word were lost. Consequently, his body of work has ever since been assessed and reassessed as the greatest contribution to English literature. That is despite the fact that we know that different printers took it upon themselves to heavily edit the material they worked from. We also know that Elizabethan plays were worked and reworked frequently, so that they evolved over time until they were worn to perfection, which means that many different hands played their part in the active writing process. It would, therefore, be fair to say that any play attributed to Shakespeare is unlikely to contain a great deal of original input. Even the plots were based on well-known historical events, so it would be hard to know that what fragments of any Shakespeare play came from that single mind. One might draw a comparison with the Christian Bible, which remains such a compelling read because it came from the collaboration of many contributors and translators over centuries, who each adjusted the stories until they could no longer be improved. As virtually nothing is known of Shakespeare's life, and even less about his method of working, he shall never know the truth about his plays. They certainly contain some very elegant phrasing, clever plot devices, and plenty of words never before seen in print. But as to whether Shakespeare invented them from a unique imagination, or whether he simply took them from others around him is anyone's guess. The best bet seems to be that Shakespeare probably took the lead role in devising the original drafts of the plays, but was open to collaboration from any source when it came to developing them into workable scripts for effective performances. He would have had to work closely with his fellow actors in rehearsals, thereby finding out where to edit, abridge, alter, reword, and so on. In turn, similar adjustments would have occurred in his absence, so that definitive versions of his plays never really existed. In effect, Shakespeare was only responsible for providing the framework of plays upon which others took liberties over time. This wasn't helped by the fact that English language itself was not definitive at that time either. The consequence was that people took it upon themselves to spell words however they pleased, or to completely change words and phrasing to suit their own preferences. It is easy to see then that Shakespeare's plays were always going to have lives of their own, mutating and distorting in detail like Chinese whispers. The culture of creative preservation was simply not established in Elizabethan England. Creative ownership of Shakespeare's plays was lost to him as soon as he released them into the consciousness of others. They saw nothing wrong with taking the ideas and running with them, because no one had ever suggested that one shouldn't. And Shakespeare probably regarded his work in the same way. His plays were weren't sacrosanct works of art. They were templates for theater folk to make their livings from. So they had every right to mold them into productions they drew into crowds as effectively as possible. Shakespeare was like the helmsman of a sailing ship, steering the vessel but wholly reliant on the teamwork of his crew to arrive at the desired destination. It seems that Shakespeare certainly had a natural gift, but the genius of his plays may be attributable to the collective efforts of Shakespeare and others. It is rather satisfying notion to think that his plays might actually be the creative outpourings of the Elizabethan milieu in which Shakespeare immersed himself, that makes them important social documents as well as seminal works of the English language. Money in Shakespeare's day. It is difficult, if not impossible, to relate the value of money in our time to its value in another age, and to compare prices of commodities today and in the past. Many items are simply not comparable on grounds of quality or serviceability. There was a bewildering variety of coins in use in Elizabethan England, as nearly all English and European coins were gold or silver. They had intrinsic value apart from their official value. This meant that foreign coins circulated freely in England and were officially recognized. For example, the French crown, worth about 30p, 72 cents, and the Spanish ducat, worth about 33p, 79 cents. The following table shows some of the coins mentioned by Shakespeare and their relation to one another. A comparison of the following prices in Shakespeare's time with the prices of the same items today will give some idea of the change in the value of money. Introduction. Hamlet seems always to have been the most discussed work of literature in the world. The range of possible responses runs from Tolstoy's famously perverse dismissal of the play as unintelligible to the most far-reaching claims to its insight into the nature of the cosmos. Understanding of it has been sought from analysis and of Hamlet's personality, in our century often in terms of Freudian psychoanalytical theory, of the place in a supposed tradition of revenge plays, of Elizabethan pneumatology, the studies of ghosts and other spirits, of Shakespeare's biography, and along other routes too, numerous even to mention. It has been adapted as play, film, novel, story, and cartoon countless times throughout the world by writers major, minor, and somewhere in between. It has been classed as a tragedy, a problem play, a revenge play, and seen as entirely sui generis. Commentators speak unanimously of its being Shakespeare's most endemic work, the most problematic play ever written by Shakespeare or any other playwright. Like a black hole, it has tended to assimilate itself all questions asked of it, so that it seems to anticipate the most bizarre readings and even to sponsor mutually incompatible ones simultaneously. It can be insistently incoherent and just as insistently coherent. The audience is drawn into its contractions, deconstructing and then reconstructing the paradoxes. As time has familiarized to play to readers and audiences throughout the world, its performance has become a hallowed ritual. Yet this is a work which, by Elizabethan standards, is remarkable and unconventional, notably in its realism. In descending to such mundane matters as what happens in the play, readers coming it for the first time will find themselves pondering many questions. Interpretations of Act 1 to 3 involves issues, for example, concerning the nature of the ghost in Hamlet's mission, divinely or demonically inspired, the justice of his view of Claudius, whether or not Claudius sees or understands the play in Act 3, Scene 2, and whether Hamlet does or does not mistake Polonius for Claudius in Act 3, Scene 4. Readings of later parts turn on, amongst other things, how far Hamlet's madness is considered to be real and how far feigned, whether Fortinbras is seen to as an unruly hothead or a worthy heir to the throne, and whether the Hamlet of Act 5 is the familiar part failure of the past or the repository of a mysterious and beautiful disintertedness. All this is to say nothing of the by now ancient question, why does Hamlet delay in killing Claudius? A question widely posed, frequently but rarely answered, and now coming to seem less than useful. But it would be wrong to lay the stress exclusively on the problems, the questions, the mystery of Hamlet. Though nothing is more certain than they will continue to engender debate, the play will be read and watched for other reasons. The particular excellence of Hamlet was for Johnson its variety, its mingling of merriment and solemnity, frivolity, and horror. Something of this is echoed in Tillard's sense that simply as a play of things happening, of one event being bred out of another, and of each event being described with an appropriate and unwearied brilliance. Hamlet is a supreme. Superlatives seem to come cheap with this play, but Hamlet's readers would undoubtedly continue to find the world's most sheerly entertaining tragedy, the cleverest, perhaps even the funniest. They will also find Shakespeare's power to entertain uniquely combined in it with the power to mean.